Welcome back to Ninetale Hobbies. This is going to be the first in a series of breakdowns of units for Bot Wars. We're going to start with the coils in the starter box. Starting at SR1, we have Fork Tongue. This guy is a low-key badass. While he's not going to be able to take on the big general units, the big chunky high point guys and everything, he's going to be able to clean up all the activation padding, the small bots that are kind of grouped together that are used as utility or energy generators. He can sneakily do chip damage to the bigger units and everything if you're having a problem getting damage on them. He has a ranged combat of 3 dice, close combat of 2, which when he's actually in close combat with the critical dice, that gives him 3, shields of 3, and health of 6. He's no slouch when it comes to getting in. He's generally all around good character. If you can kind of hold him back and sneak him into the lines in the middle couple of rounds, that's where he's going to be most effective. Ram attack, of course, is going to up his movement to 10 and give him an extra close combat die. He has blast, so while you're moving him in, if you can find a cluster of other units, it's going to do that splash damage outside of 2 inches, which is going to be really nice. Like I said, if you want to do some chip damage to a larger unit, if you can't get through their shields, if they've got a smaller unit next to them, you can do little bits and piece damage. And then his combat scimitar, which gives him the 2 attack die reroll, blast stacks on top of that. So you don't want friendly units next to Fork Tongue when he's attacking. If you can get him into a group of opposing bots, he can start taking out quite a few of them or doing additional damage fairly quickly. While he's not the most durable and everything, for 10 points, he is absolutely worth what he can pump out in damage. Up next, we have Deep State. Statistically, he's almost the same as Fork Tongue. He's the same cost. Differences are he's got a strategy rating of 2 and health of 7. Special ability wise, he also has Ram Attack for when he needs to get in, close the distance, and do some extra damage. But unlike Fork Tongue, he feels much better staying at range. The Iron Skin is definitely going to help against ranged attack. The single reroll is surprisingly useful. Like I was saying, strategy-wise, you do want to keep him at a distance and only close in when you absolutely need to. Up next, we have Core Drill and Mineshaft. These two little symbiotes, the only difference between them is that Mineshaft costs 4 points and Core Drill costs 5. They're both strategy rating 3, movement 6, range combat of 1, close combat of 2, shields of 2 with 4 health. Stealth lets them not be attacked within 5 inches whenever they're in stealth mode, which can come in handy, but an additional thing that stealth allows them to do, along with the symbiote ability, is to be able to be carried by a host. And if you don't want them to be carried by a host, these little versatile guys also have Tunneler, which allows them to start the game off the board, and starting at round 2, you roll a d6, and on a 4, 5, or 6, they can pop up anywhere on the board as long as it's outside of 5 inches of an enemy model. I really like these two. There's a lot of different strategies that you can do with them. Some of them we'll get in later with one of the bigger bots, the host that comes in the starter set, Shogun. These guys can be objective grabbers. They can help boost others in combat while they might not be the strongest ones by themselves. When they're working with other bots, that's where their real combat potential comes from. They can pop up, even though it's not super reliable when they will. Sometimes it's the very last turn of the game before you get that 4, 5, or 6, even though it's a 50% chance. It's kind of iffy sometimes. These are great little bots. If you want to do the objective grabbing with them, they're small enough that they can hide behind most terrain and not worry about getting hit, and you can then dump all of the energy that they're generating into somebody else on the board. The other combat strategy we'll talk about when we get to Shogun. Now we get to Slaughter, who, in my personal opinion, is the toughest coil bot in the starter set. He's not the biggest. Everyone looks at Shogun, who is the biggest mini that comes in the set, and automatically thinks that he's going to smash face. And while Shogun is no slouch, I think Slaughter is the better choice. He's 5 points cheaper than Shogun. He's got a lower strategy rating. Stat-wise, they're exactly the same for combat, except Slaughter only has a close attack of 2 instead of 3, so he's 1 dice less. Same health, but he has better special abilities for combat. He has Ram Attack, which is going to give him the extra close combat die, and he has Blast. So that makes him more effective at range, and if there are multiple units around for his ranged and close combat attack. He does also generate 1 additional energy for 3 instead of 2. Slaughter is the closest you're going to get for a general attack piece for the Coils faction. So very powerful linchpin in combat when it comes to the Coil faction. And now we're on Shogun, the biggest bot in the Coils faction, at least that comes with the starter. SR of 8, movement of 8, which pairs well with the air support, which allows him to triple his movement. So pretty much with deployment and everything, turn 1, Shogun can zoom all the way to the other end of the board. Range combat of 3, close combat of 3, shields of 3, and health of 8, generating 2 energy with the special ability of Host. So this is the bot where you can carry Core Drill and Mineshaft. This is the strategy that I was hinting at with Core Drill and Mineshaft. If you stick both of them inside of Shogun, flies across the board using air support and lands, he is able to then do a ranged attack on the next turn when Core Drill and Mineshaft pop out. They can't be touching a enemy, but they'll be able to move into combat, attack, and then on Shogun's next turn, they can also move in and close combat. So they pair really well as a trio. Shogun on their own is not bad. I mean, 3 dice for ranged attacks, 4 dice for close combat, decent defense, doesn't have any special abilities that super help in combat. If you time that air support well, especially if you're hosting the 2 little symbiotes, you can deal a surprising amount of damage using that combo. And the final coil from the starters box is Raven at an SR9, a giant movement of 10 inches, ranged attack of 3, close attack of 2, shields of 4, only 4 health, and the only super ability they have is air support and 2 energy. The air support with 10 movement is 30 inches, so you can move anywhere on the board that you please. Raven is very much a hide and wait character. You wait for your opportunity to strike. Their nimbleness is reflected in the 4 shield dice. And while you don't have any rerolls or anything, 4 shields is really respectable. Even though he only has 4 health, that defense pool will help keep him alive for an additional turn or 2 if he gets into a bad spot. You want to wait for your enemy forces to spread out or not pay attention to something, and then deep strike Raven into their back lines, even possibly with Shogun. So that way, if Shogun is hosting the two symbiotes and Raven moves in as well, then that's 4 bots attacking in the back lines instead of 3. And that can just cause all kind of havoc to your opponent's play strategy. So all in all, my viewpoint on the coils strategy wise, especially with the starter, is do not rush in. Do not try to take on the Valiants that are also the other faction in the starter set head on. Wait, bide your time, play the objective if you can, and try to do chip damage, little bits and pieces at the first parts of the rounds until you can kind of bait or spread out your opponent, and then use their movement and their versatility. They're a very Swiss Army knife utility style of faction. So I hope this helped give an insight into these beginning units and what they can do, what they can't do, and just a general overall strategy that maybe helps you get started looking at these guys in a helpful way. Remember, if you haven't, to do your YouTube ritual and appease the small gods of the algorithm, and I'll catch you on the next one.